By Jonah Blank. He's the senior political scientist at the RAND Corporation, which focuses on policy and decision-making through research and analysis. This is going to kick off with these two leaders sitting down with their translators. And Trump says he'll know within a minute whether or not this is going to be a success. Brings to mind what Bush said back in 2001 when he said, "I looked into Putin's eyes, I saw into his soul." What about this chemistry? You know, I mean, just getting to sitting. I know you, I've sat next to you, but in a minute, I don't know if I could get your measure of who you are. What about this kind of talk? I mean,
that's not how political leaders actually get things done. I worked for 12 years in the U.S. Senate. I staffed two principals who went on to become the Vice President of the United States and the Secretary of State. I've staffed more meetings than I could count. And there simply is not a way of boring into somebody's soul and finding out in a minute who they are.
You heard Owen's piece. He had Lindsey Graham saying it'd take 15 years to denuclearize. What is reasonable? I mean, they're saying we want everything scrapped. Is there going to have to be a schedule, and is it going to have to be tit for tat? I mean, if the DPRK does one thing, the U.S. does another.
Yeah, let's get realistic here. There is no way, in my judgment at least, that Kim Jong Un is going to agree to anything, or let me take a step back. He might agree to it. He won't deliver on anything that is complete, verifiable, or irreversible. So it's possible he may make promises, but he's not going to deliver on these things. Why? Because he does not want to become Muammar Gaddafi.
We're watching Kim's procession leading over to the Capella Hotel right now. So what do you expect to come out of this meeting? Because you can't sit down and hammer out a deal, as you just pointed out, in one quick meeting. I mean, is this just the beginning of a process?
At best, it's the beginning of a process. The question is it a process that leads anywhere, or is it merely empty symbolism? And empty symbolism would serve both individuals quite well. It would help Mr. Trump with his domestic political base. It would be very advantageous substantively for Mr. Kim, because a summit meeting with the U.S. president has been at the very top of North Korea's wish list since the 1990s. So just by showing up, Mr. Trump is giving Mr. Kim over half of his top ask.
Well, and he's riding pretty high right now, isn't he? I mean, he's had two meetings with Moon Jae-in, of course, one of them very celebrated, very pronounced, a couple of meetings with President Xi Jinping. It seems like everybody's kind of knocking at his door now. Just last night, out touring Singapore, kind of like a rock star, doing selfies. I mean, this is an amazing transformation in a sense, isn't it?
It is. Anybody who thought that Mr. Kim was crazy or was in over his depth definitely would have to recalibrate. This is, at least in my analysis, the most capable North Korean leader since at least his grandfather. There have only been three, but someone who very much is in control of this process. He's calling the shots, and others are responding.
Trump wrote the art of the deal, but what we've seen is him as president is he's very good at ripping up deals, of course, walking away from the Iran deal, the Paris Climate Accord, even leaving Quebec. He tore up the communique, didn't want a part of that. How important is it for him to get a deal?
I think it's very important for him to be perceived as getting a deal. I don't think he's particularly concerned with the substance of the deal. I think he's only concerned with the perception of himself as a negotiator. And that is very dangerous because from Kim's perspective, he's interested in substance. So if he can deliver empty symbolism and get substance in return, both individuals will be happy, but the interests of North Korea will be served more than the interests of the United States.
Where do things stand a year from now or 2 years from now, beginning with this process? I mean, do you just see it as just this is the two of them getting their photo op and that's about it?
That would be an optimistic scenario. A pessimistic scenario.
That's pretty pessimistic, actually, to be honest with you.
Well, the pessimistic scenario is that Mr. Trump actually wants substance and is genuinely surprised when Mr. Kim is unwilling to denuclearize, and then goes back to a more bellicose attitude, the one he'd had before, threatening fire and fury and warfare. that would be far, far worse, because as much as I would not like to see a bad deal, I would like even less to see a disastrous and unnecessary war.
Jonah Blank with eyes wide open as we talk about this summit coming to place in Singapore. Let's